Hi, how you doing today? I hope you're well. My name is NO-EXP. I figured I should introduce myself. Now that we're acquainted, how about we talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows? Well, if you insist. This is the 14th game in the mainline series about the centuries-old feud between the Assassins and Templars, two diametrically opposed foes who will never be bros. One wants freedom for all mankind, the other believes people are like children running with scissors and therefore must be protected from themselves. Got it? Good. For as long as the series has existed, fans have expected a game set in the land of the rising sun, and it makes sense, right? Japan has a rich history to draw from, it's got beautiful locations, ancient castles, plus shinobi, assassin. This should be an easy win, right? Well, unfortunately, no. This is just more of the same issues that plagued the series since they moved to an open world format. A huge empty map, a long list of quests that all feel the same, uninteresting and bland, hardly any stick out as memorable, and some of the new systems in place feel more of a hindrance than useful. It all lends itself to an experience that's incredibly boring. The game follows our two protagonists. Naoe, a young shinobi, is our titular base-jumping, war-hopping, eagle-eyed, hidden blade-wielding assassin, and Yasuke, a mysterious stranger from a distant land who, due to certain circumstances, finds himself a samurai in service to Oda Nobunaga. The duo find themselves joining forces to take down a shadowy cabal called the Shinbaku. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. Naoe, as the assassin, specializes in assassination. She can also fight quick skirmishes with a few enemies, but can be easily overwhelmed in larger confrontations. Yasuke, on the other hand, is a walking tank. He mows down enemies, but is the least graceful of the duo, making scaling walls and quick escapes nigh impossible for the giant. Both of our heroes are likable enough. Naoe is headstrong, rash, but compassionate. She can become blinded by rage, especially against those that have wronged her, but ultimately, she cares about the future of her country and is willing to eliminate anyone who would use their position to make the lives of the people harder. Yasuke, on the other hand, is a kind yet honorable warrior. Definitely the calmer one of the duo, is willing to stand up for what he believes in, even when that brings him into conflict with Naoe.
Cannot build a world without mercy, or we are no better than those we overthrow.
Constantly questions his role in the group, and he's trying to find his place on a land where he's seen as a bit of an odyssey. Your quests are found in the objective tab of the menu, and there are a lot of them. Now, don't get me wrong, I want more missions for my buck. However, most of these boil down to go here, talk to this person, then go take care of the target. Most of which involves a lot of travel, which in a game like this, where the map is wide and the road is long, can feel like getting anywhere is painfully slow. Especially at the start of the game when you don't have many fast travel locations unlocked. Why would you want to use fast travel? Oh, we'll get to that. Quests are set up in a ring of target. Select one to get started and then prepare to use the scout feature. One of the helpful new systems is scouts. Pop open the map and use the hint the quest gives you in the top left of the screen to zero in on your target. But bear in mind, they are a resource and you'll need to restock them either by paying a fee at Kaguraga, one of the many unlockable hideouts scattered across the map, or a beckoning NPC who, after you listen to their tale of woe, can become a resource token. Additionally, you can wait for the seasons to change. We'll talk about seasons later. You can, however, stumble across your target if you have a general idea of where they are. You can also turn this feature off in the settings, but it is tied to a trophy/achievement, which you can get fairly early on. The idea had potential, but its implementation was kinda gimmicky and basic. It would have been better if scouts would have opened up different possibilities for assassinations or even enemy weaknesses, not just giving you the location icon. Most quests do offer a decent level of flexibility, with approach and even completion. Decide halfway through you want better gear, or you're just not feeling this one right now, you can do that. You can approach each quest with either character, so if you prefer a stealthy option, go with Naue. But if you prefer a more direct approach, Yasuke is your man. There are some dialogue choices between each characters, but the outcome isn't really affected in any meaningful way, so it's more of an illusion of choice. The way quests are presented are a little muddled. I would have preferred there to have been some kind of log which denotes which quests are relevant to the story and which ones are side quests. They do kind of all just clump together, and there are tasks outside of the main 12 targets that are relevant to advancing the story or even skill progression. I think something just like changing the quest tracking icon color would help, something like gold for main quests and blue for side quests would work. Feeling a little lonely? No hot singles in your area? Don't worry, Shadows has your back with some 15th century love. Yes, that's right, romance is here. But it's paper thin and not worth the time, effort, or travel. Each romantic entanglement boils down to some pointless busy work and then implied you know what. And then that's it. It's not exactly compelling stuff, but there are options for each character, so pick whichever face makes you swoon.
Time is a veil. Tomorrow is an illusion.
And all we have left is here and now.
This is a tale about corruption, power, and vengeance, with a conspiracy so bold it threatens to shake the very foundation of Japan to its core. A shadowy cabal are poised to take over through an intricate web of hidden agendas. Sounds interesting, right? But what we end up with is a plot that doesn't feel connected or interesting. The mediocre, agonizingly slow, by-the-numbers plot is hampered by boring quest design. The web of conspiracy tale that we're getting at didn't really click with me because the antagonists themselves never felt like a threat past a jumping off point, and they became more like a list of names to me than anything else. And the more I played, the less I cared about any of it, which in turn made the game feel more like a chore than entertainment. Which is a shame, because the time period the game is set in is perhaps one of the more complex points in Japan's history, and there could have been an interesting story to tell. Ubisoft just couldn't find it. Something about myself is I love stories in video games. Yeah, some are ridiculous and some are convoluted, but the great ones pull you into the world no different from any book, TV show, or movie. Now, not all games need to have a compelling story to be great video games. The premise and gameplay can absolutely make a great gaming experience, but when it has one, I like to get invested. I love digging into the lore and the history of that world. The richer the better. Assassin's Creed has a long history at this point, and while the lore has remained mostly consistent, and not all of the games have had stellar stories, they at least felt like they were connected. This one felt more loosely attached to the franchise, and while there are in-game reasons for it, the game does very little to bridge the gap in a fulfilling way. There are also 6 companions to recruit, or not. They're not really integral to the plot, they each have a unique ability, which you can level up using cold, hard cash. It would have been nice to level them up with XP like you could in Brotherhood, but oh well, I guess. Let's talk about combat. Combat is heavily centered around light and heavy attacks. The best way to fight is to either break the enemy guard or guarding at just the right moment, which opens up a posture attack, indicated when the enemy glows gold. Executing a posture attack does massive damage to either the enemy's armor or themselves directly. Enemies themselves are fairly varied, but they're not really a challenge. They have fairly simplistic attack patterns, which come in 3 types, indicated by flash or glow, depending on the attack used. White is basic, blue is a flurry or combo, and red is unblockable. Enemies also tend to attack one at a time, and on top of all that, they feel like damage sponges. But worry not. Both characters have access to an arsenal of weapons to suit your playstyle, and each weapon has several special abilities so you can hit the sponges with a variety of attacks. Boss fights aren't much better either. A boss is just a mob you fought before with an extended life bar, so don't concern yourself with it too much. Combat is simple enough, and it doesn't take too long to get used to, and while there are a few additional skills that do change things up and make things easier to progress, getting them is an absolute chore. And this is where skill trees come in. As you would expect, skill trees are how you get new skills. As you level up, there's skills for each weapon class and skill class, like Assassin for Naue or Samurai for Yasuke. So what's the big deal, you might ask? Well, Not only do you need experience points, you also need knowledge points. Knowledge points come from completing activities in the world such as finding lost scrolls on a leisurely walk through a temple, or finding inner peace with a Kujikiri as Naue, or unlocking the secrets of the martial arts with a kata as Yasuke. Sometimes these activities are nowhere near you, so you'll need to travel to another province depending on which activity you want to spend your time doing. And on top of all that, each rank, and there are 7 ranks, increases the total amount of knowledge points required to advance, forcing you to spend more and more time doing activities that feel little more than padding. Having progression be so intricately tied to activities is really stupid, almost like you wouldn't use them if they weren't needed to further the game. Stealth overall is perhaps the best it's been in years. Enemies will look for you for longer and gather allies to help look for you. They'll even check in any nearby bushes just in case you pop to squat. And if you think climbing up the side of a building will keep you safe, a well-placed rock from a foe will bring you crashing down. Get caught in an enemy castle, and if you don't stop them in time, an alert bell will sound, and well, now you're wanted in that province. And you will be attacked on sight, at least until the season ends. You can also use 2 scouts to remove the wanted level early. There are now seasons which change how you approach stealth. Spring has less plant life, so less bushes to hide in. Summer has the most natural camouflage. Autumn is, as you would expect, plants are losing their foliage, so less hidey holes, which brings us on to winter. Snow slows you down, and there are also some small bodies of water which freeze over, making them inaccessible. Each season has 2 phases and tends to last around 30-ish minutes a phase. I enjoy winter the most, and also when it's foggy. Ubisoft did a great job with weather overall. I really love the atmosphere when it's snowing or the fog is so thick you can hardly see in front of you, or you're trudging through the snow. It's pretty great. In any open world game, there needs to be something to draw you in. The world you inhabit is just as important as the characters. If the world isn't appealing to the player, why would they want to spend any time there? There are many ways to achieve this. Interesting characters to meet, secrets to uncover, hidden bosses to name a few. Shadows has none of this. Now, I am no expert on 15th century Japan, and I imagine Ubisoft got fairly accurate to the time period. However, the way they chose to present their Japan is just uninteresting. The world feels static, lifeless, and bland. It does a really poor job with engaging with the player and making you care about it. The world is just far too large and far too empty. There is just not enough to make the player want to explore. The activities and boring side quests are not enough to justify traveling around this huge map, and I think Ubisoft knows this, which is why their auto travel mode works the way it does. Pathfinder works like a waypoint, but appears as a white line in game instead of a minimap. It usually selects the primary objective, but you can select a custom location by deselecting any missions. This can also be done while not on a horse, and can be used to find a nearby road if you've taken a shortcut through a brush and have got lost. But sometimes it will say that it can't find the road. Once you've set a destination, you then toggle on follow road. The horse then auto travels to your destination in real time, however at a much slower pace than you would do if you were riding manually. And that is pretty convenient, and other games do have similar features. However, there is still an element of threat in those worlds. Here, the world is so neutered and lifeless, there is almost zero threat in doing this. And I say almost, as you may cross paths with a wild Ronin, but even if you do, so long as you're on your horse, there's nothing they can do to stop you. Just to let you know, there's also an anime store where you can unlock cosmetics by finding data fragments, or the in-game store to buy Helix credits. I've never been a fan of this in a single-player game. I know Ubisoft have done in-game purchases before in previous titles. I just think they have no place in single-player games, and For Honor exists. And clearly they've had no issue crossing over the games before, so I don't get why they didn't just add them there. Performance-wise, the game plays very well. No crashes, good draw distance, and it can be played smoothly on quality mode, targeting 30 frames per second, or performance mode, targeting 60 frames per second, or 40 FPS if you have a TV or monitor that runs at a crispy 120Hz on balance mode. But the drop in overall quality is noticeable on performance mode. I had no issues with frame rate in either mode. Switching between both characters, while not seamless, it only takes a handful of seconds. Fast travel and load times are fairly quick. Atmosphere and music is a mixed bag. There are some solid tracks scattered here and there. This is mostly in boss fights. One in particular felt very Kill Bill to me, which I really liked. But overall, the game doesn't have a memorable soundtrack, so don't expect much. Like I mentioned before, the performance is solid. The game doesn't look horrible, but its art direction isn't anything to write home about either. I will give them props for castles, those are pretty good. Aesthetically, weapons and armor do vary in look, and there is some nice looking gear despite the loot box feel. The issue I had was that legendary gear was so plentiful, it doesn't feel legendary, and there is no point in bothering anything else. Oh, but gear is customizable, so if you find a piece of equipment you find particularly ugly, you can make it look like something you do, so that is a plus. In the end, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a boring, uninteresting slug that has far too large a map for its own good, with far too little in it. The pace of the plot is slow, with one-note antagonists, a tedious and never-ending fetched quest slop, most of which feels like was added to artificially increase the game's runtime and mediocre activities. Every moment in this game felt like it was work more than it was entertainment, and that is a shame because the time period the game lends itself to is perhaps one of the more defining period in Japan's history, and they could have had a decent game here if they just scaled things back and went for a more focused approach. I think the problem is Ubisoft can't decide what they want Assassin's Creed to be. Is it an action-adventure game? Is it an action RPG? Or do they really want to make a battle royale game with a battle pass? Until they can make up their minds, I can't help but think we'll see even more games like this from them. So I break games down into 3 scales, first of which is entertainment. This includes story, challenge, relaxation, replayability, and social for multiplayer games. Second is performance, does the game run well? Are there any game-breaking bugs? Etc, etc. And third and final is atmosphere. This covers art direction and music. Why not combine all those factors and give it 1 score? Honestly, I think it helps show how I came to my conclusions overall, but I am happy for people to let me know what they think. Score, no score, I'm new, so any feedback is appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.